Well, good morning, everybody, from the great state of Montana. So I'm here in Great Falls today, and we're still waiting on the sun to rise, but you can see it's moved across about half of the country so far. I want to take you back to last night, though, so let's go back and catch some of the imagery before sunset. You can see quite a bit of the snow cover underneath some of the clouds here, including some of the fogs that have continued to hit parts of the Columbia Basin down into central Oregon. But it's that snowpack I'm trying to keep a very close eye on. You also notice that the snows from earlier this week in parts of Oklahoma and Texas, especially right in through here, that as the day wore on, that snowpack was melting. So you can kind of see it fading right here. As we come back to this morning, the storm system that moved through the United States, delivering some light snow, some heavier pockets into parts of the Midwest. It's now clearing New England, where we still have winter storm warnings out for parts of Maine. But what's following that is best seen here in this animation of winds later today. Now, that low we just mentioned is right here, and its main frontal boundary stretches all the way down into the Gulf of Mexico. Behind it, we have a shot of Arctic air that's going to come through over the next 3 days and really push through the plains and into the Midwest, delivering a substantial shot at cold air along with higher pressure. This is going to set up our lake effect snow. We're going to see decently heavy snowfall amounts on the leeward side of the lakes. We also have very strong Santa Ana winds today coming off of the Great Basin, descending over the mountains in Southern California. We're expecting wind gusts here, possibly in that 50 to 70 mile an hour range at times. Humidity levels could be as low as, they could be down there in the single digits at times. But from here, what I want to do is let's kind of talk about what's going on in the near term, and then we'll talk about this shift as we dislodge the big ridge over Alaska. So the high-res NAM today, again, you can see all the lake effect snow. You can see the scattered snow showers, for example, in and around the Red River Valley, in Manitoba, parts of North Dakota. And as one system leaves, there it is, there's the next Arctic front that comes down. Now you saw those strong winds in the northern plains. There's a lot of concern here of some blowing and drifting snow because of this, and the temperatures are really just going to plummet behind that. So the Arctic front pushes over the Rockies here and slides down into the central plains. But other than that, for the next few days, that's all we're really talking about. One system exits, lake effect snow, big Arctic front that slides down. Now you can see it in the temperature pattern. Here's today's high temperatures, and as we go into tomorrow on Thursday, there it is, and getting into Friday, that cold air really kind of penetrates pretty far into the south. It then begins to move east, but you're going to notice in this animation that once we get through the weekend, here's Saturday into Sunday, there's going to be some moderation. And it'll be interesting to see how this sets up, because you notice it's happening in the plains and also along the west coast. A lot of this is some downslope flow, so we're getting some warming coming off of the flow of the mountains, and we get a little bit of compressional warming there. And then we do see that the pattern by next Tuesday is really starting to shift around a bit. So we need to see where that's all going to go. Now, before we kind of dig into the European model and really kind of get a sense of what's going on, let me just give you a snapshot, though. We're still another 5 to 7 days of this overall pattern favoring a big ridge in the Gulf of Alaska. It's starting to break apart, but just this broad trough that has to exit. So most of the next 5 to 7 days is drier for a lot of the United States. But some of the hints of the pattern change are beginning to show up right here. We're going to have a quick discussion about that. There's two neat things I want to point out. One of the ways by which we kind of assess and understand those large ridges is to use indexes. So a lot of times I show you the index, and sometimes I just show you the result of the index. One of the ones we watch all winter long especially is called the EPO. Now the EPO was very, very negative. You can see off the charts here, but it's expected by Monday into Tuesday to recover back up into neutral and maybe even just stay somewhere in that vicinity for a while. Now, what is the EPO? Well, when it's negative, the East Pacific Oscillation favors a large ridge here, which often results in a deeper trough over the eastern part of the United States. But as I play forward, watch what happens to the ridge that's in Alaska and the one that's over Scandinavia. You can see that going through Wednesday into Thursday and Friday, they're very well established. That's the pattern we're in now. But you notice there's some troughs coming off of Japan, pushing into the open Pacific, and they're going to work to knock that cross-polar block out. So by next Tuesday, this is the week of Thanksgiving, getting into next Wednesday, we're watching several systems, and it's this one right here, the initial one, that I'm keeping my eye on. It's in the ensembles, but not well resolved yet. And what's interesting about this, well, I got to take you back to this animation. I was talking with my colleague and good friend Matt Reardon, and one of the things we often notice is that when you have such cold air that gets all the way down, into the Gulf of Mexico and into the Atlantic, you often get these very strong winds that move right in this mountain gap right here. And sometimes when you see those strong winds, it's really just more of an indicator of how far into the Gulf of Mexico you've moved the really cold air. Now, why that's important is that shifts what we call the baroclinic zone in the atmosphere, where you have this contrast of pressure and temperature right down here into the south. And what that tends to do is that tends to give us a storm track that dips pretty far to the south. So we're going to watch that emerge as the block is knocked out of Alaska. That's kind of the second thing, and we can go and see that right here. Now, this is the European model, so this is the current system we're dealing with right now. In fact, this is what it looks like midday today. So heavy snow in Maine getting into the Canadian Maritimes. Now behind it, we know the recipe. The Arctic front comes down, the lake effect snow is on, and we're into some deep cold. Now this is Saturday getting into Sunday. Now you start to see this activity down here. This is kind of the precursor to what I'm talking about. You see Sunday into Monday. Okay, we have one system that rolls over Florida. Then the ridge is broken down early next week, and that's when the flow starts coming into, British Columbia first, and then it moves in next Tuesday and Wednesday into the northwest. See it there? Now it's at this point that one of these little short waves has snuck down here into Texas, and it's going to draw on that baroclinicity, that contrast, and it's going to blow up a system, we think, on Thanksgiving. So that's noon on Thanksgiving, getting into evening, and working our way through the night into Friday. And did you see that? That system kind of popped out right here, and now we do continue to see better flow into the Pacific Northwest. So in addition to all of that, the temperatures are going to start to change as well. So here we are the next 5 days locked into the cold, but then as we get out there day 5 through 10, the temperature's moderating. And then day 10 through 15, we've replaced that large ridge bringing the heat into Alaska with the trough, and that opens up the United States to a lot more activity. So week 1 is shown here, precipitation anomalies. Week 2, now you look at that and see a bunch of white. That's actually representing two things. They're spread in the model, but it's not favoring dry conditions. Activity's increasing in the northwest, and systems start moving across the country. The CPC was on this yesterday. I look forward to their update today, but from the 23rd to the 29th, better chances for being at risk of heavy precipitation along coastal Washington, Oregon, Northern California, and same thing down here in parts of the south and southeast. And when it comes to the snow, with that same pattern, we deliver better chances of it in the northwest as the flow really starts to pick up again. So we're dislodging that block. Now, some bigger questions remain for me, and I'll spend some time thinking about this, but you just look at this map of the last 30 days of precipitation in terms of percent of normal. This large region in the plains here, including much of the hard urban wheat belt, still remains very dry. And so systems need to start to dig into Colorado to return that moisture into this area, not run across the northern tier of the United States or skip it coming down all the way to the south. So we need to really see a few Colorado lows show up that can really start to revive that moisture in that area. Lastly, I just want to give you a quick update on South America. I take you to this website here, worldagweather.com. I really like this one. Over the last 60 days for Buenos Aires, we've been very dry, large deficits, but some of the recent rains put a bit of a dent in that. You can see if I go over to Cordoba, we've also started to eat away at some of the drought issues. Santa Fe, a little bit less, but it's still eating away at it. And just kind of look at these other regions in Argentina. This is Entre Rios, I think is how you say this. Again, a substantial drought issue. But there has been better rains there, and we can actually see that showing up in the new GRACE root zone soil moisture data. So where it's actually been quite dry has been in Mato Grosso and moving a little bit over toward Goiás. We've actually seen some improvement down here in Argentina. But it's the long-standing drought in Argentina which really shows up when you look instead at the groundwater. That's where you've got your major deficits in this area. And over the next 10 days, we continue to see very dry conditions. Okay, so this is Buenos Aires here. Cordoba's in there. This is the Paraná River, along which we have Santa Fe, Entre Rios. But you do just see that there are drier conditions throughout Argentina, with the exception of southern Buenos Aires, and it does extend into parts of southern Brazil. So there's continuing to be, I would just say, less than ideal weather conditions across much of South America. We're just going to keep watching it, and we look forward to getting a new long-range update at the end of this week. So I'll talk to you again tomorrow morning. Have a good one. Thanks.